plan for your life? Do you know where you want to go? Are you looking to be happier, healthier, and wealthier while having more fun every day? Meet our empowerment architect and goddess gardener, Cynthia Brian, as she engages in energetic exchanges with successperts, bringing you research, innovations, strategies, and techniques to strengthen your life, business, and personal spaces. Be inspired, motivated, encouraged, and empowered. Lend us your ears right here on Star Style. Be the star you are. The party starts now.
Well, welcome, Power Partners, to our informational playground at Star Style. Be the star you are. We're brought to the airwaves under the auspices of Be the Star You Are charity, a 501c3. And we are here to entertain and educate and hopefully inspire you. I am Cynthia Brian, coming to you live on the Voice America Network. This is the Empowerment Channel. The miracle moment for today is brought to you by Be the Star You Are. We are featuring Wednesdays with writers, and we're bringing writers to the airwaves, authors that have books that are out through Be the Star You Are and Star Style. So please visit BeTheStarYouAre.org and make a donation so we can continue doing this. Edwin Chapman said this: "A true man never frets about his place in the world, but just slides into it by the gravitation of his nature and swings there as easily as a star." I thought that was perfect for Be the Star You Are. So as part of our Be the Star You Are disaster relief outreach program, Be the Star You Are has collaborated with the Authors Guild and with Star Style to showcase new books that are launched by many authors from around the country in a variety of genres. So for the next few months, you want to make sure you're tuned in here to Star Style, Be the Star You Are on Wednesdays from 4 to 5 for Wednesdays with writers. And then on Express Yourself Teen Radio, which airs on Sundays at 3 p.m. Pacific for Super Smart Sundays. And they will be focusing on authors, bloggers, poets, as well as some musicians. And both shows broadcast right here on Voice America Network, the Empowerment Channel. So, you know, for here at Star Style, it's going to be a giant readathon, and you're going to learn about books that you're not going to see events right now because nobody can, we have to shelter in place. Well, with that, what we're going to be talking about today in segment 2, we have author Hoyle coming up. He's a writer, educator, and independent filmmaker. His documentary films have won numerous awards. They've aired on PBS. And we're going to be discussing his second book, which is called Mavericks, Mystics, and Misfits, Americans Against the Grain. And he takes the reader on a journey across American history through the lives of very exemplary men and women whose stories capture the spirit of their time and place and reveal American character. So that's a very interesting thing. And, history can repeat itself, right? But let's find out what these Mavericks, Mystics, and Misfits have to say. And then in our final segment, John Seibert Farnsworth is a nature writer, and he's based in the San Juan Islands in Washington State. And he has written a new book called Nature Beyond Solitude, Notes from the Field. And he writes in situ, which means he actually takes and does his writing in the field. So he doesn't write it years later or anything. He has a great sense of humor, and he explores the communal experience of nature at 5 different West Coast field stations during a sabbatical that he's taken for 6 months. And he assists with the long-term ecological studies. So it's really fun because it is field notes, and you just feel like you're in the moment right there. But right now, I want to talk about fashion and sustainability, because climate awareness has morphed into all facets of our life. We're always using the words recycle, reuse, repurpose, renew. I mean, they have been in the moment words for quite a while. And fortunately, the fashion industry is maybe finally getting on board this movement. At least we hope so. So we want to see how we can be more sustainable and still be more fashionable. Now, as you might have known, last year the Swedish Fashion Council made an unprecedented move while planning the annual Stockholm Fashion Week. They actually canceled the week entirely, and they cited concerns about its environmental impact. Now, not everybody in fashion is taking such drastic measures, but it did speak to the urgent need for action on the issue, and one that designers and customers alike are now recognizing. So, fashion is responsible for about 10% of the world's carbon emissions and nearly 20% of the world's water waste. Now, that is huge. And this is according to United Nations groups. An estimated 85% of the world's textiles end up in landfills or are incinerated. And fast fashion probably, contributes a lot to this waste, but it's not the only thing that's contributing. At the G7 summit in August, 32 major fashion companies, including Kering, Chanel, and Inditex, that's the parent company of Zara, they committed to a host of environmental initiatives, agreeing to eliminate single-use plastics by 2030 and to seek out more sustainable sources of raw materials. And Gabriella Hearst made headlines when she offset the carbon footprint of her spring 2020 fashion show in New York by limiting transportation energy costs, by booking local models, by minimizing packaging and energy use, and reducing weight. And then after Nordstrom created a mechanism for customers to shop online for sustainable styles, customer searches for that category rose 3,100%. That's in just 1 year. That's kind of amazing. So, do you think the fashion industry finally has shifted from lip service sustainability to actually having an impactful action? Well, maybe. Many are making some changes, and others are being forced to make changes, or they're being incentivized to do better because of socioeconomic forces. And there are stricter recycling laws in many, many countries, and that galvanizes activisms. And in 2019, Karen, who's the owner of Gucci and Balenciaga and Saint Laurent, they and a lot of other luxury brands, obviously, they pledged to offset the greenhouse gases by purchasing carbon credits and to commit to a full carbon neutrality across the company. Now, I'm not sure how that works, but this is what they're saying they're going to do. And that's what Burberry and LVMH also have said they're going to do that too. Because writing checks won't make the fashion giants truly sustainable, but it is a potent and promising gesture from the industry leaders. So we have to kind of think of the carbon footprint, especially on the red carpet, because red carpet fashions, and we're over the red carpet season, but award seasons is that time when fashion clothes, gowns, suits, they're worn once, if at all, but they're jetted across the world. And some stars are shaking up the status quo because they're realizing the sustainability factor. For example, Joaquin Phoenix showed up at the Golden Globes in January in this beautiful Stella McCartney tuxedo, and he promised to rewear it throughout the award season. Now, it's of course easier for a guy to get away with that than a gown, but we have to start thinking about maybe just recycling gowns. Now, Hollywood stylist Jean Yang said several of her clients have requested sustainable options for their red carpet appearances. And one of the people, Aquaman, Jason Momoa, yeah, that's right, at his Aquaman premiere, he wore a vintage Tom Ford kind of era Gucci robe that Yang found for him. And then he actually slipped it off to dance the haka. And so, he tried not to use fast fashion. And Yang is trying to cook up a concept for suits that could be worn 3 or 4 different ways to reduce the need for her clients' frequent wardrobe changes. It's now kind of boast-worthy to participate in sharing economy and reuse enterprises such as Rent the Runway or The Real Real. And they actually post on their website the gallons of water that are offset by each customer's purchase. So this is heartening, but none of this nears the tidal wave of action that is actually required of the fashion industry and the consumers who support it. So it may take some real discomfort to make changes necessary in time to avert planetary disaster, and discomfort, unless we're talking stiletto heels, it's rarely embraced by the very ease-obsessed fashion industry. So what do we people who just don regular clothes do? Well, I think it's time, especially for people who are shopaholics or just have to have the newest wardrobe all the time, to start rethinking this and go into your closet and see what you have from last season or years before, and see if you can repurpose or reuse or add a belt or a collar or make it longer or shorter or whatever it is, because it's the only way that we are going to be sustainable, have less of a carbon footprint, and really do help our environment. As for me, I have sewed most of my own clothes and interior design things, as far as window treatments and pillows and upholstery, blankets, all that kind of stuff for years. But I really like to repurpose things. I have a fantastic Halston gown that I actually bought at a consignment store many, many, many years ago. And it has been refashioned, and I have used it on shoots on many different movies, including Peggy Sue Got Married. It always gets chosen for some reason, and I think probably about 12 different times. So I'm not going to give that up. But every time that I have an event, I don't go out and buy something new. I just figure out how I can make it look contemporary and use it for today. So think about that. You can do that too. If you have some really good fabrics and good things in your closet, there's no need to go out and buy more. So let's save our planet together. Okay, when we come back from break, we're going to be talking to author Arthur Hoyle and his book, Mavericks, Mystics, and Misfits. I'm excited to get this party started. So stay with me. I'm Cynthia Brian, and I'll be back in a bit.
Be the star you are, the star you are.
Are you seeking a dynamo speaker for your meeting, conference, or organization? Internationally recognized keynote speaker and New York Times bestselling author and lifestyle coach Cynthia Brian will bring her energetic expertise, passionate professionalism, and ebullient personality to your event. Hailed as an expert in lifestyle, women's issues, self-help, personal balance, leadership, media, gardening, and interior design topics, Cynthia Brian is a popular empowerment keynote speaker around the world, lecturing to audiences of 100 to 5,000. For rates and bookings, call 925-377-STAR, 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 and visit www.cynthiabrian.com. When you want the best, book Cynthia Brian, www.cynthiabrian.com.
This business of show business is calling out to me.
Get started acting or modeling with a consultation from media coach extraordinaire Cynthia Brian, who has guided entertainment careers for over 2 decades. Call 925-377-STAR or visit www.cynthiabrian.com. Pick up a copy of her award-winning book, The Business of Show Business, and start living your dreams today. Call 925-377-STAR, 925-377-STAR.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit Facebook.com/Voice America.
It's power time on Star Style. Be the star you are. with your passion, purpose, and possibility producer, Cynthia Brian. Now, back to the Power Party.
This business of show business is calling out to me.
Well, we're back. I'm Cynthia Brian, and you're listening to Star Style, Be the Star You Are. Our guest for our Wednesdays with Writers in this segment is Arthur Hoyle. He is the author of Mavericks, Mystics, and Misfits, Americans Against the Grain. He's a writer, an educator, an independent filmmaker, and you might have even seen some of his documentary films because they've won numerous awards. They've aired on PBS. And he's received a media grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. He has received his bachelor's and master's degrees in English from the University of California, Los Angeles. Yay, go UCLA. And taught one of my alma maters. And taught English, coached tennis, and served as an administrator in independent schools. Arthur, are you with us?
I am.
Oh, great. Welcome to Star Style. Be the star you are.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Cynthia. It's so nice to be talking with you.
My pleasure. I'm very excited to have you with us, and congratulations on your book. I love the cover. I think it was exciting, and I love the title as well, The Mavericks, Mystics, and Misfits, Americans Against the Grain. So let's dive right in, Arthur, because you chose 10 occasions to write about in your book. And these are all people or couples that you wrote about throughout history. But I was just wondering, what was the criteria for choosing a person or a couple as your focus?
Well, the first criterion was that they be exemplary in some way or another. And that was the kind of the motivation for the book in the first place. It grew out of my biography of Henry Miller, who writes about exemplars in his nonfiction. His exemplars are usually artists like Walt Whitman or D.H. Lawrence,
right.
Or spiritual figures like Jesus or the Buddha. But he also admired people who just did significant things with their lives and in their lives and lived kind of as artists, not necessarily in an art form, but just made their life an art. So I was looking for people at key periods in American history who stood out because of the way they lived, or in some cases because of things that they wrote. But most of the people that I chose because of the outstanding things that they had done that were in one way or another countercultural. That's the Americans Against the Grain part of it.
And very brave to be countercultural. That
yes,
was the thing that struck me, their courage. Yes,
many of them paid a heavy price for the positions that they took. And not all of them were admired in their own time or even after their time. But many of them later became sort of legendary or heroic figures in the American story.
Well, and some of them most people know, like Thomas Paine, that you wrote about the voice of the revolution. But because we have not limited time, I wanted to jump ahead if it's okay.
Sure.
I was really interested in William and Ellen Craft, Runaways to Freedom. I was not aware of them, and I found their story so incredibly heroic. The fact that they were both slaves, and they had together, they got married, they made this brave escape from slavery, and how they became advocates and literally warriors to help free their people. Will you talk a little bit about them and how you discovered William and Ellen Craft?
Well, I actually came across their story a long time ago. It was back in the 70s, actually, that I came across their story when I was doing some research for a possible documentary film on the history of Black people in the United States.
Ah, fascinating.
So that was when I first came across their story, and what popped out was William had written this book called, Runaways for Freedom or Runaways to Freedom, that he had published in England, and it sort of gave a very sketchy outline of their saga. And the documentary film didn't work out. I put the project aside. But when I got the idea for this book, and I wanted to do a chapter on slavery in the South, I immediately went back to them, and I had already done some research on them, so I had kind of a head start. And I found a lot of additional material about them in my research. And you're right. What's striking about them is their courage, the risks that they took in their escape. It was that
was like a movie in itself. I could really see this being made as a movie. I mean, I vote in the Screen Actors Guild Awards, and Harriet was up for the award and for Academy Award as well. And just to know what they had to go through, it was really, and you just portrayed it so beautifully in your book, Mavericks, Misfits, and Misfits.
Thank you. Yeah. I think what Ellen had to endure, the stress that she was under, having to carry out this ruse
as a man.
Yeah, impersonating a man and impersonating a white man. Just given her background and given the context, was just an amazing act of courage and daring. And of course, William was the one who kept telling her, that she could do it, and that he believed in her. But William was in the background because he was, being a black slave. And
he was a slave, exactly. And it could have so easily gone south, and he could have easily been traded. I mean, there was even that, you mentioned in your book, there was even that encounter where somebody offered to buy him. Yeah.
Wow. Well, and the risk that they were taking was that they would lose they had very privileged lives as slaves. And they were risking losing that and being sold off into really the most horrendous conditions of slavery, where you're working on sugar plantations in the heat and under cruel overseers,
cruel owners.
Yeah. So it was, they took a big risk, and then the fact that having succeeded, their thoughts then turned to their fellow blacks and what they could do to help them, by working in the abolitionist movement, and then going back into the South during Reconstruction.
Wow, that was really frightening.
Yeah, I mean,
they were risking their lives again.
Yeah, and facing the hostility that they were sure to encounter. They knew they would encounter it, and to go back and do that, it is a kind of epic story. I'm surprised it hasn't been made into a movie.
It really, I mean, that chapter just stood out to me so much that it, I mean, you're a documentarian. Maybe you still need to make that movie and make it into a film, instead of a documentary.
Yeah.
Because it is just excellent. But, you wrote at the end of the chapter that they never succumbed to the racism that formed the basis of life in the American South. They just endured it and triumphed over it.
Yes.
So they really, not only just courage, but they had optimism, they had confidence, and a determination, I would say, just incredible determination.
Yeah, very strong will to do what they did, just never giving up.
And it just brought it kind of full circle, because there's so much racism today in our world.
Yes.
It's frightening to me what's happening again. You have some references to the Ku Klux Klan in here that I thought was really interesting as well. And gosh, we just don't want to see that ugly head rising again.
Well, it's a deep current. It's a deep current in our history. The slavery tradition came here with the settlers. I mean, because it was in Europe, and it was in the ancient Greek,
in Rome,
in the ancient Greek and
Egypt,
Roman.
in Greece.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been throughout history, but it still astounds me that humans can be trying to sell humans. It's still happening today. I mean, it's still happening in Libya, where they're selling other Africans for a couple $100 to go work in fields. It's really sad.
Yeah, well, it just shows you how deep-rooted institutions are in human history, and how difficult it is to uproot them. How difficult it is to bring about change. We're constantly fighting the same battles over and over and over again through history. So, it's part of our part of who we are as human beings.
It's part of our DNA. It almost feels like it's part of our DNA.
Yeah.
You know, you have a bachelor's and master's degree in English, but and you're a beautiful writer, Arthur. I want to compliment you.
Thank
Your
you.
writing
Thank you.
is very descriptive and lovely, but you're obviously a student of history as well, or at least you really enjoy biographies and autobiographies. And does that come from your love of doing documentaries?
Yeah, there's a tie-in there to digging out the facts of a situation and understanding the context of a situation. And I mean, I've always been interested in how we as individuals have to contend with all of these different contexts as we go through our lives. I mean, we have the context of our family, we have the context of our school, we have the context of our society, and we're all trying to be, who we are, or find out who we really are. And then sometimes in order to do that, you have to, really investigate the forces that have shaped you and try to understand them. So I think that's what was driving me on the historical side of this book, was to trying to understand, what were the circumstances that shaped the lives of these individuals, and then how did they assert their individuality in spite of the power of those shaping forces?
Yeah, and how did they rise above it?
Yeah.
Well, and every single every character in here is really fascinating. But I'm going to talk about Thomas Merton, the restless hermit. What an interesting dichotomy of a character. I mean, he began his life as a kind of a bon vivant, and then becomes a Catholic monk, and finally a priest, and then falls in love again, and then becomes a hermit, and then lives at the Gethsemane, I guess the Catholic Church eventually he really decided that was going to be his home so that he could write in solitude. And so he was always kind of trying to escape his past, it seemed.
Yes. I think he felt burdened by his past. And I also think that he carried a very strong sense of guilt about, the child that he fathered out of wedlock, the shame that he brought on his family, the shame that he brought on himself. I think that was a very traumatic event for him. But he was obviously a man who had strong passions and was something of a sensualist.
Right. And that's why that's why he's so fascinating, because he went from being the sensualist to becoming this hermit who literally, flagellates himself and he wants to be holy. I mean, he was always struggling against pride and wanting to be this lover of the world.
Yeah, I mean, he had an awareness of these contradictions in his own character, and for him, the priesthood and the becoming a monk, going into an order where there would be a strict discipline that would confine him in a way, that would tame his passions. He just saw that as the way for him to rise, to transcend his baser nature. But he was very connected to the world. He remained connected to the world. He was
very connected. I mean, he traveled and he wrote so much, and he met with Dalai Lama. And I mean, he met with very important people, and he changed people's lives.
Yeah, he was very influential. His writing drew a lot of people into the Catholic faith and into, living their lives on a more spiritual path. Do you
think that, I mean, the way he died was interesting, because he always said he wanted to be struck by lightning.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not exactly the way he died, but do you think that in the end he would have felt fulfilled in that he had achieved the inner peace or the connectiveness to God or to his soul that he was really seeking?
I think he found it. Yeah, I definitely think he found it. I think it shows in his writing. You can't write the way he wrote unless you are in a very holy place. Mm-hmm. And I definitely think that he achieved his goal of spiritual refinement. But that's too is an endless process. You're kind of never there.
Yeah. And where's there, right?
Well, there's
there.
There is the empty mind that reflects back on the universe, and that I was very amused by that little anecdote in the chapter that I came across, that he was having a conversation with a Buddhist monk in Asia who had been on the spiritual path for, I don't know, 30 or 40 years.
Some years, right?
And he asked this man if he had ever achieved a state of complete emptiness in his meditations, and the guy said no. He hadn't been able to do it.
He was still working on it. I know. When I read that, Arthur, I went, oh my gosh, I have a long way to go. I work on meditating every day, and my mind doesn't go empty. Yeah. Well, there's so much more in this book. It's a fascinating book. I wanted to get to the Plains Warrior, and I also wanted to talk about the revolution from the ground up, about the environment, but we're actually out of time. So I want to direct listeners to Arthur's website, arthurhoyle.com. It's spelled ArthurHoyle. The name of his book is Mavericks, Mystics, and Misfits, Americans Against the Grain. And if you want a really in-depth, fascinating read about people who have really made a difference in this country, this is the book for you. So, Arthur, I'll just let you give your last final words, and we have to end our conversation, unfortunately.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show, Cynthia. I really appreciate it. And I just want to encourage people. This is a difficult time for everyone because of the pandemic, but also because of all the turmoil in our political life. And these people that I found in this book are inspiring. They gave me heart to read their stories, and I think that their stories will give heart to you as well.
Absolutely well said, because we do need inspiration and we need direction in these hard times. So be safe, be healthy, be strong. Visit arthurhoyle.com. Pick up a copy of Mavericks, Mystics, and Misfits. Thank you, Arthur, for being a guest on Star Style. Be the star you are. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm very grateful, Cynthia. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. You've been listening to Star Style, Be the Star You Are. We're going to be right back, and we have another wonderful author coming up with Nature Beyond Solitude. John Farnsworth will be joining me. I'm Cynthia Brian. We are coming to you live. This is the Voice America Network, the Empowerment Channel. So I hope that you're feeling very inspired. Be right back.
Be the star you are.
Change your world. Change your life. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
Business Bites. Here's Cynthia Brian.
Be the star you are. the star you are.
The annual cost of illiteracy to American taxpayers is over $225 billion. Help increase literacy, reduce violence, and improve positive media messages by making a tax-deductible contribution to Be the Star You Are charity. A top-rated nonprofit, Be the Star You Are promotes positive role models, produces positive radio broadcasts, and donates positive books to empower women, families, and youth. Be a power partner and join our galaxy of stars. Visit our website at BeTheStarYouAre.org to make a tax-deductible donation using PayPal or send checks to P.O. Box 376, Moraga, California, 94556. BeTheStarYouAre.org. Dare to care.
You are the star.
Follow us on Twitter for more great ideas at Voice America Empowerment.
Are you seeking a dynamo speaker for your meeting, conference, or organization? Internationally recognized keynote speaker and New York Times bestselling author and lifestyle coach Cynthia Brian will bring her energetic expertise, passionate professionalism, and ebullient personality to your event. Hailed as an expert in lifestyle, women's issues, self-help, personal balance, leadership, media, gardening, and interior design topics, Cynthia Brian is a popular empowerment keynote speaker around the world, lecturing to audiences of 100 to 5,000. For rates and bookings, call 925-377-STAR, 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 and visit www.cynthiabrian.com. When you want the best, book Cynthia Brian, www.cynthiabrian.com.
It's power time on Star Style. Be the star you are with your passion, purpose, and possibility producer, Cynthia Brian. Now, back to the Power Party.
This business of show.
This is a Power Party, and I am so glad you stayed with me. Hello again. I'm Cynthia Brian. We're coming to you live on the Voice America Network. This is the Empowerment Channel. And our next guest is a fantastic nature writer, and you're going to just love our conversation and what he has to say. His name is John Seibert Farnsworth, and he's actually based in the San Juan Islands of Washington. He writes about ecology like a storyteller, and his book is humorous. It is self-deprecating, and it's fun. He is an emeritus faculty at Santa Clara University. He was chair in the Environmental Writing and Literature Department. So welcome, John, to Star Style, Be the Star You Are.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the invitation.
Well, I am delighted because I'm a nature girl, but nothing like what you have been doing at these field stations. But before we get into your book, Nature Beyond Solitude, Notes from the Field, I just wanted to say from reading your bio, you actually did end up getting a place in the San Juan Islands because you had mentioned that in your book that you were looking at a boat for transportation.
Right.
So you have to be on a ferry.
Right. Well, we live on a non-ferry island.
That's what you said. You said you wanted to live on a non-ferry island. You wrote that in Nature Beyond Solitude. And
yeah.
So I was just wondering so you made it. You did it.
We did it. Right. Right. It was,
how's that going? How do you like it?
Well, it was crazy because I lived and worked in a dormitory during my last dozen years at Santa Clara.
Uh-huh.
And we bought this thinking as a retirement getaway at some point. And what a difference from, I lived with 420 first-year students. Freshmen, basically. Uh-huh. And then to come to the solitude of the island, even before the lockdown bit, this has just been a real great place to be
in solitude,
learning a new
sheltering
ecology.
In place. You mean it's probably like the only creatures you're seeing might be the animals and and the forests and the creatures in the sea.
We saw a weasel yesterday, and that was kind of a highlight. We see deer all the time, and so on. So, yes.
So you don't have to worry about the people. So probably the pandemic is not going to reach you. Let's hope. Well, let's get to your wonderful book, Nature Beyond Solitude, Notes from the Field. You write in situ, which means you're writing in the field. What I was so impressed with is your sense of wonder and fun. It was very contagious because you seem to be, every little thing seems to interest you so much. How did you choose these various field stations that you wanted to visit during the 6-month sabbatical that you took?
Well, I just started with one and added another and another. I didn't know if it was a crazy idea or not. The first person I called was in Carmel Valley at the Hastings Reserve, and just asking this very famous professor from Cornell to say, can I come and be kind of a unpaid research assistant for a month and write about it? And they said, sure. When can you get down here? And every one of them I called, the 5 that are in the book,
they all said yes right away.
They were the same way. They didn't take any, and of course, it gained momentum as I would say, well, I'm going to be at Hastings, and now I want to come and visit your field station. And they're, oh, great. Some actually sponsored me with a residency, gave me a small stipend, or else helped with travel money, whatever. So it just kind of happened and worked.
Well, it was fascinating the way that you did it, because you had to put together like things to bring, your equipment, your writing table and all the different things. Well, how did that all work out when you were going out into the field? Because sometimes it sounded like, I remember in one chapter you were talking about, I don't think I don't need much water today, so I'm just going to take one water bottle. Right. And then you're almost died out because you were sweating so much going up the hill. How did you figure out what you needed to bring? Because a lot of the places you had to bring your own food, and of course you had to bring your beer and wine and your tea.
It would have been great if I could have done a 6-month practice and then go back and do the real thing, because I made pretty much every mistake. That's one thing that John Steinbeck said in the Log of the Sea of Cortez, that he really needed a second expedition. He only had one, but because they finally figured out what they needed to bring and so on. And I very much had that experience. At one point, I was limited by how much I could have per day, and I forget what it was, including.
It was like 30 or 40 pounds, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like not very much stuff, and you had, and that meant everything.
And right. So I had 1 beer per day to make it in that thing, and then they were going to weigh everybody, but
students who were leaving that left you a case.
Yes. And they weren't even my students.
I know.
That was so crazy. But the guy just waved me on to the boat and didn't weigh me at all, because he could tell I was a researcher or a faculty person or whatever.
It had to be the beard. Or you said a little bit of the grain in your beard. You looked so professional that you didn't look like a student that was coming to party, right?
It was pretty obvious I wasn't one of the kids.
Well, you did these different stations, but on Santa Cruz Island, there are these island foxes that you described as the size of cats and that are disappearing. I having been a scuba diver and having dove all the different islands down there, I was just wondering about your observations while you were there. So tell us about these island foxes. And I also want to know about the honeybees. You were saying that the honeybees were a problem, whereas where every place else they're talking about colony collapse syndrome. So what was the issue with the honeybees? And again, tell me about those foxes. They sounded so cute.
Well, first of all, the foxes were just amazing. And being on an island where they historically haven't had predators, they're almost
friendly.
tame. Yeah, they
Almost
don't want you
friendly.
to come up to them, but they'll come up to you. And especially if you're barbecuing some chicken or something like that, and they smell it and all. And they're amazing creatures. When I was there, they were still on the endangered species list. A few months later, the ones at Santa Cruz were taken off. They were delisted, which was it's such a great success story.
Great. Yeah,
and you always hear
that's why I was concerned, because it said that they were endangered. That's what you wrote about. So they're better. They're okay now.
Yeah, there's still a lot of conservation. As a matter of fact, next week is the Island Fox Working Group, where you get people from everywhere, different zoos, the Navy, different universities that are working on this conservation. So we still have to keep an eye on them. But right now on that island, there are a couple thousand of the foxes, and that's great. The honeybee thing was interesting because they're not native, and
they're not
especially on an island.
That island.
Correct. So the same with the Argentine ants that were they're going to displace native species and maybe not do as good a job pollinating native plants. So they got rid of those, and that as soon as they got rid of the native honeybees, the non-native honeybees, different thistles started dying out that were invasive and so on. So they're really trying to do kind of a pure restoration of that island because it's such a good laboratory.
So are they trying to bring back native honeybees? Is that what they're trying to do?
Well, there are certainly native bees.
The
honeybee is a European import.
Okay, that's it. So the honeybees they weren't good for the island. But the native bees, are they endangered?
Well, see, the problem is sometimes, like the ants, once the Argentine ants get into the island, they take out all the native ants. They kill them. And that's in
so
some
that was the
island
same thing with
ecologies.
The honeybees.
Yeah, like in Hawaii, that's just caused a chain, a cascade of different ecological problems. So, but I was surprised too when I first heard that. You got rid of honeybees. I thought they were always good. Well,
right.
bees are good, but not necessarily.
That was my feeling too. I had no idea until you wrote about it.
Yeah, I was surprised.
One of the things that I wish you had done in your book, Nature Beyond Solitude, and if you're joining us, we're talking with John Farnsworth, who is the author of it, is I wish you'd included photos because you describe the most beautiful birds. And have you always loved birds? Have you always been a birder? It sounds like your wife is a birder.
Yeah, well, we're doing that together, certainly.
That's
I
fun.
haven't always been because I'm severely colorblind, and it took.
That was going to be my next question. So go ahead, talk about that.
And I think once I discovered really good optics, the more expensive kind of binoculars and stuff, where I could actually see details in the feather topography and not have to worry about the color vision part of it. And I just kind of made it happen. A lot of my birding is by ear these days. We can just be walking down a road and I don't even have to see the bird. I know what it is now, so you make up for different things.
So in your color blindness, John, do you just see black and white and grays?
No. I see about 8 colors, but I don't distinguish between brown and green. I've never seen purple. So.
Okay, because again, when you were writing, and I know you were out in the field, and when you were doing the sightings and how you have to call the different sightings, on your walkie-talkies, and you missed one because it had an orange breast or something, but you couldn't see the orange. So that was fascinating to me. So what you've really done is you've compensated by just listening to their calls now.
Well, you're right, and knowing the feather topography, knowing each feather what it's supposed to be doing in terms of patterns. When you talked about the pictures, and I took photography the whole time I was out there. Part of that was I was working with Cornell University Press to make this a very affordable book for students. And we were determined to keep it under $20. And the only way to do that was not have
have photos,
section.
right.
You
know, I totally understand because I'm a garden writer, and I did a recent book with photos, and I could not believe this tiny little book, what they wanted or what they did charge for it, because it has pictures, it has color pictures in it. It's like, who wants to pay that? That's crazy.
Right.
You know,
right. And I, as a college professor, I was always very attuned to what it was costing. My students were paying so much more than when I was an undergraduate in the 1970s for books. So I wish I could have done that, but
well, I believe you have to be, you are or were a very popular professor there. I loved your blog post, your post-election thoughts for environmental studies and sciences students on 11/11/2016. So evidently, I mean, you were in the field when Trump was elected, and that sent kind of a shiver probably through your students' lives because of the environmental things. How did your students respond when you sent out your blog?
They appreciated that.
It showed you really cared.
In a capstone class, and they were just saying to the professor, who was a good friend of mine, who was running that, maybe should we change our majors, going into this and so on. A lot of these students were my advisees, and of course I'm on sabbatical. What can you do? And you don't really get a sabbatical from advising in some ways. And so just kind of letting them know I was there and here are my thoughts and hang in there. And a lot responded to me right away. They just needed that invite to say, and
they needed the encouragement, right? That you had, that you had actually lived through a time when things weren't so good, but you followed what your heart desired and it's worked out and you loved it. In other words, follow your passion, no matter what's happening, because things always change.
Well, and that's it. And you don't know what's in store and so on. I'm still in touch with a lot of those kids. I shouldn't say kids, but
I know. I call them kids too. When you work with them as students, they're always kids.
But the ones that are graduating this spring and not having a way to.
It's so, I feel so sad because I have a lot of my students who are graduating either high school or college or whatever, and they don't get a graduation this year. It's so, so sad. So we're running out of time, John. Your book is Nature Beyond Solitude, Notes from the Field. Do you have a website to promote? Because all I have was the cornellpress.cornell.eud book. It's this long, long thing. Is there a website that people should go to?
I just set up one on Authors Guild. So I think if you just Google John Farnsworth, I don't have.
You don't know it yet.
I should know it.
So, okay, good. All right. Well, that's what we tell people. So Google John Farnsworth, FARNSWORTH. The name of the book is Nature Beyond Solitude, Notes from the Field. And you will really love it. I just loved your book. I laughed. I just chuckled a lot. And I really enjoyed the way that you obviously are writing the way you're feeling and thinking, and your observations were so fun. And you inserted so many different things that I loved it. So we're out of time, but I want to thank you so much for being Star Style. And best of success to you and your wife, and enjoy living out there on the island. And thank all of you for being great listeners. Make sure you're here every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific. We want to bring you renowned authors from around the globe, because you can shape your life and you can make your dreams come true. For information about Star Style Productions, visit CynthiaBrian.com. To make a donation to Be the Star You Are charity that was bringing you the show, visit BeTheStarYouAre.org. My aim is always to encourage, inspire, inform, amuse, and motivate, and read books this week. And we've got these great books for you. Until next week, when we celebrate once again, remember, love always wins, kindness always prevails, and smiles will keep us happy. I'm Cynthia Brian for Star Style. I thank you and encourage you. Be the star you are. See you next week.
Be the star you are. The star you are. Be the star you are. You are the star.
It's been a pleasure bringing you our life-changing program, Star Style, Be the Star You Are. We have you on our radar, as it's our goal to inspire, inform, entertain, and motivate you to be the star you were born to be. For more information, visit starstyleradio.com. And to make a donation to the charity, go to BeTheStarYouAre.org. Ignite the flame that burns brightly within. Take charge of your life and coach yourself to success with our dynamic host and empowerment architect, Cynthia Brian, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the Voice America Empowerment Channel for another serving of champagne for the spirit and a power boost to live with Star Style. Until we celebrate together next week, be the star you are.
Star.